Good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Ritter. I'm your host today here on the Dakota Housing Network. I am joined in studio by, as always, our producer, Jim.
Yo!
Here he is. And I promise you we have a stellar musical theme. He threw this one just out of left field, and so I think you're going to enjoy it today. My guest today is Mr. Eric Holmstrom from the Center for Technology and Business and the Idea Center. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. I'm happy to be here.
All right. Eric is going to talk a little bit about more what the Idea Center is later in the show and talk about all the great things they're doing. And we've been, the BMDA, our organization, the Idea Center have been partners for a long, long time now. And Eric has been a fantastic addition to that staff. And I've asked him here today to talk about the Idea Center, the Center for Technology and Business, along about the many things they're doing. And we probably don't have enough time in this hour, but we're going to touch on some of them. But before we get to that, we're going to open today's show the same way we open every show. And we're going to do a little bit of Bismarck Mandan by the numbers. Eric, what does that sound like to you when I say Bismarck Mandan by the numbers?
Well, numbers are always interesting, so I'm sure we're going to get excited here.
See, it's exactly it. And I don't know if it's just me. I don't know if it's just me, but I love stats like this. Maybe that's why I do what I do. But each month, our organization, the Bismarck Mandan Development Association, produces a document called The Economy at a Glance. And this is really a collection of economic indicators from around Bismarck, Mandan, Burley, and Morton County. And you can find it on our website at www.bmda.org. You can find it there on the left-hand side. But this document is really important, Eric, because as you and I both know, I mean, you and your family have been in Bismarck, Mandan for a few years now. It's easy to drive around town and see all the new buildings being built, seeing all the new stores come to town, and you know there's growth happening, and you know there's growth occurring. But quantifiably, sometimes I think it's more valuable to look at hard numbers to say, yes, this is how our community has grown. This is how the community is changing, and that seems to serve a purpose and gets people's attention. You agree with that?
Well, and it's hard to understand. Sometimes you lose perspective. You don't realize how much bigger Bismarck is now than it was 3 or 4 years ago.
That's a fantastic point. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, because just look at the population, and we just ran these numbers a couple weeks ago. The estimated population for Burley and Morton County, which is for all intents and purposes our metro area, that population right now is probably pushing 125,000 people. You go back 16 years to 2000, right at the change in the millennium, that number was only about 95,000 people. And so when you tell people there's 30,000 more around, they generally believe you. They just don't know if the numbers. They just don't know the numbers that high. And so I think those numbers are valuable for that reason. And so let's start off with it's always kind of one of those questions we get asked about the unemployment rate. I mean, Bismarck Mandan is kind of a beacon of hope, I think, for a lot of people. And our unemployment rate right now, the latest numbers we have from November of 2015, right there at 2.2%. I mean, Eric, think back to your college econ classes. I mean, you heard the same thing I did. Full employment was 5%, and that's when everybody who wanted to work or could work was in the workforce.
That's right. And, I came from a place that doesn't have these kind of numbers. And these numbers are what attracted us to us. We heard North Dakota and said, we're not coming to North Dakota. And then we saw the economic numbers. It drew us out here. We saw the community and loved it, and it was a really easy decision to come.
Absolutely. And I would tell you, as of last month, there are still about 2,300 open jobs in Burley Morton County. And that number will get higher once the weather turns and you start seeing concrete being poured and you start seeing construction activity in full force. You're going to see that number probably come close to 3,000 open jobs again. And so I know there's a lot of concern in the community right now based upon the price of oil, the price of other ag commodities. We can't control those things, and so we can't worry about them. What we can worry about is what we have in front of us. And again, that's still 2,300 open jobs and a 2% unemployment rate. So we feel very good about that. Now, that many people in the workforce means they're spending money. And so when you look at taxable sales and purchases, because when retailers call, Eric, I mean, you've gotten these same phone calls. You've done this in your business planning work. People always want to know sales. People want to know how much money is being spent in your economy. And the best indicator that we've got is taxable sales and purchases. In North Dakota, retailers don't have to report their sales numbers, so we can't tell you that. We can tell you how much money is being spent all told. And if we look at the first 3 quarters of 2014, Q1, 2, and 3 of 2014, there was probably, that number was about $1.6 billion. And remember, 2014, oil prices are still $130, $120. Well, 2015, oil prices now, that same time period, Q1, 2, and 3 over 2015, oil prices are now $30 and $40. that number is still 1.58 billion. So, that's a negligible offset with $100 change in the price of oil. So when people ask you or me about what's the impact of $30 oil, so far I'm not going to say there aren't impacts because that would be naive to say. But in terms of the overall strength of the economy, it doesn't appear to be the be-all, end-all that people think it is.
No, Bismarck there's an economy here that's here, and it's not necessarily entirely dependent on the commodities.
Absolutely. And to your point, we do have one of the most diverse economies of any community in the state, or the region for that matter, between being the state capital and being a government town, having 2 large health systems, having 2, 3, 4 very quickly growing school systems, and then, of course, energy generation, having basin here, MDU here, coal mines, power plants, oil refineries, things like that. It lends itself. It really means that Bismarck Mandate's economy is built for times like this when you have commodities that drop, and you and I have been around long enough. You're going to see commodities go back up at some point. It's just a cycle. So please know there is still activity. There is still a lot of dollars being spent in our economy. Something else we get asked about a lot is real estate, and I think people have been used to a real estate market that was untenable. That was not sustainable. And you're not going to get 3 full price cash offers on your house every single afternoon, folks. It's just not the way it's going to go. But what I would say is that when I asked our friends at the Bismarck Mandan Board of Realtors to tell us about the real estate market, they gave me a very interesting statistic. And they said on February 16th of this year, so this Tuesday, there were 228 properties under contract. That compares to 183 on that same date in 2015. So for all the folks out there who, maybe your house is out there a little bit longer, maybe it's not quite the same pace it was a year or 2 ago, but listen to that stat. This is quantifiable information that says there are more properties under contract, more properties being sold at this time this year than there was last year, and I think that should be very encouraging for everybody in our community.
Absolutely.
Now, the last thing I'll say, producer Jim has told us we got about a minute left here before the break. I do want to touch on real quickly apartments. There are a lot of apartments being built in Bismarck and Mandan, and for the first time, we have a vacancy survey. And so if you look in Bismarck, Mandan, those apartments built prior to 2010, the vacancy rate is right around 2 to 3.5%. Those properties built after 2010, between 9 and 10%. So we've got quantifiable information, and we're going to talk more about it when we come back from the break here on Super Talk 1270.
Currently, it's 37.
Dave Ramsey is heard here. Super Talk 1270.
And welcome back, everyone, to the Dakota Housing Network. My name is Brian Ritter. I'm with the Bismarck Mandan Development Association. I'm your host on this magical carpet ride. Producer Jim, what is this song? I can't read your screen from over here.
Instrumental hits of the 70s.
And who is this?
Billy Preston.
See, it's an educational experience in more ways than one here on Super Talk 1270. I'm joined today by my guest from the Idea Center, the Center for Technology and Business, Eric Holmstrom. And Eric, let's talk about, we've got some listeners who maybe have heard of the Idea Center, maybe have heard of the CTB, maybe don't know of the recent news and what's happened there. So let's talk first and foremost about the Idea Center, because you've been at the Idea Center now for a few years. Let's talk about what the Idea Center is and what your role is and what you're trying to do here in the community.
Absolutely. The Idea Center is a hub to help develop entrepreneurial businesses, to help businesses start, to get from that phase where you've got an idea on a napkin, and how do you take that and actually turn it into a business. And
you have seen napkin ideas, haven't you, Eric?
We've seen napkin ideas, and we've seen ideas maybe coming off bar napkins.
Sometimes that's where the best ideas happen, guys. So Eric, so you are a hub, and people have, as the name implies, people have an idea, and they're really not sure where to turn or where to start, and they come through your door, and what happens next?
That's one of the great things that we offer. We see a bunch of ideas every year. Just in January, we had 19 new business concepts come through. So we meet people, a lot of people with a lot of different ideas, with a lot of different needs. So we develop relationships with them and connections, and we know sort of where energy is happening. So we set up a meeting with everybody. There's no cost to it. Come and talk to us for an hour. Tell us what your idea is. We'll look at it and try to develop. We see some hurdles here. We see potential here. Does it fit different programming tracks? Because the state of North Dakota is a great spot to start a business. There's some funds available for specific business ideas to help get started, to help get over those stages of, is it really viable? Can I make a prototype? Who do I go to? Those sort of expensive things that stop people from going forward. North Dakota has some programs to help people get over that hump. So if we can put your idea on one of those tracks, that's wonderful. But even if we can't, we can connect you to organizations like the BMDA, like the Downtowners or the Mandan business developers to help you find a location, find out where you can find the information you need to decide if your business is viable. So you always leave with homework.
So Eric, so you've obviously had people come to your office in all stages of development. I mean, people coming in with an idea in their head, got an idea of a napkin. I mean, I think we've probably cell phone videos before, but is there any advice that you have for entrepreneurs? I mean, if they're thinking about coming to you, you have any advice in terms of what they should have prepared? What should they come to you with? Or is it just, come and talk to us? Is that the best course?
Absolutely. We don't want to set up a hurdle before somebody. So if you've got an idea, you're not an engineer, maybe you've never worked in the internet, and you've got an idea for an app, you don't really know where to go. So for us to say, come with an estimate for how much it's going to take to build the app and what it's going to look like, that's a hurdle, and people can't do that. Mm-hmm. We want them to come to us, and we can help try to make those hurdles lower.
So is it, would you advise any listeners who maybe are in that stage, should they call you, make an appointment? Should they just walk in? How should they best approach you?
Because of the interest we're seeing. I mean, we see an energy right now in the Bismarck-Mandan community that we haven't seen since I got here.
That's awesome.
We haven't had 19 concepts come through the door in a month, and I think this month we're probably going to have more than that. So we really ask you to give us a call, 223-0707, to set up an appointment, and we'll get you scheduled as soon as we can. That way we can bring in the people on our team who have the specialties that can help you.
And remember to ask for Eric, tell him you heard him on the radio, and that way he knows where you came from. Now, Eric, so the Idea Center, obviously, you've got a great staff. You've got a great team that can help entrepreneurs through. But you've also got, you're not an incubator in the sense a lot of people think of business incubators on college campuses, things like that. But you do have space. You do have space that if someone has an idea, it gets to a point where they need somewhere to go. You certainly do have that space that someone can come.
Absolutely. In fact, this is kind of an exciting thing for our organization is this past week, we actually filled all the space that we rent.
Wow.
So we've got 9 different entrepreneurial businesses renting from us right now. And we still have space people can come in. We've got conference room space they can use. We're a small organization. We want to help businesses. I've got a desk in my office. If someone wanted to work there, we'd let them. So
now, for maybe people who don't know, the Idea Center is located in Northeast Bismarck. Just if you know where the Country Hearth building is, the Eagles Club is on 26th and Broadway, just on the east side of 26th Street, correct? What's the address, Eric?
That's right. We're 2720 East Broadway. I always say we're about a block and a half from Big Boy.
Boy, you're now local, Eric. For our listeners, Eric and his family moved from Duluth, but now he's using Big Boy as a reference. He is now, in fact, a Bismarck-Mandan local. I like it. Now, the Idea Center, of course, has been a part of the Bismarck-Mandan community since 06, 07. It's right around there.
That's right.
So you've recently undergone some changes in terms of how you're structured, who you're partnering with. Why don't you tell our listeners about that?
That's true. We've now combined with the Center for Technology and Business, which is a great combination because the Idea Center was really focused. We had about 60% of our clients from the Bismarck-Mandan area, the rest throughout western North Dakota. The Center for Technology and Business provides a lot of very similar services to what the Idea Center offered, along with a component of new things, but they were a much more statewide organization. They run leadership programs in Bismarck, but also in Minot and in Fargo, rural outreach. So what we've done is we've brought all these resources that you'd come to us, we'd send you to them, or they'd send you to us. We've brought that into one hub, so it makes it easier for the entrepreneurs. They can come one place and have access to a complete suite of services, and it's been a wonderful marriage.
So now that the merger occurred late last year, correct?
That's right, November.
So aside from the suite of services that you now offer, how else have things changed, if at all? Now that you are one organization.
I think the one thing that it's really done is brought in more resources, because we just have more people dealing with more people throughout North Dakota. Somebody coming in with an idea, we're not necessarily simply limited to connecting them with people in the local area. Mm-hmm. But if they've got an idea that really no one else is working on here, but there's somebody in Fargo or Minot or Bottineau who's working on a similar idea, if both sides agree that we can share their information, we can connect those people to help them both build and share ideas.
Now, you heard Eric mention earlier in his comments about the energy in Bismarck and Mandan and what they're seeing. And the reason that we've asked Eric here today and why the Idea Center and the CTB are so critical to this community's continued success is because creating jobs isn't all about landing the next big factory. It's not all about landing the next big corporate headquarters. Certainly that's a part of it. Business attraction helps create jobs. There's no doubt about that. We can also help our existing employers grow and add employees, and we certainly want to do that because they've already chosen to be here. They've made the investment here, and we want to make sure that they continue to stay here and expand here. But one thing that we've never really had in Bismarck Mandan is that entrepreneurial vibe, that startup community, that energy where someone says, you know what, I've got an idea and I want to do it here. I don't want to have to go to Minneapolis. I don't have to go to Denver or, God forbid, Fargo. I want to be able to do it right here in Bismarck and Mandan, and that's something that the Idea Center has really helped cultivate. And Eric, talk about your role or the Idea Center's role really in that startup community as a whole.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that's been really encouraging for me moving here is I'm seeing energy not just from our organization, but you look at 1 Million Cups, startup weekends, startup drinks, the TEDx events. There's an energy here at the colleges among the young professionals that is creating really good things on its own. You create these connections and collisions between people who never otherwise would have met. There's energy in the room, and good things sprout out of that.
Now, you mentioned some earlier, and we're going to talk about events here in the next segment, but you talked about young people in the colleges. But what's always fascinating to me when we have our meetings and we talk about what things you're seeing in your organization is that entrepreneurs don't fit one mold. I mean, we couldn't. I mean, if you were in the studio with us, you couldn't look at Jim and me and Eric and say you're an entrepreneur and you two aren't. They come. I mean, entrepreneurs do not fit one mold, just by definition. So, talk about the types of people. I mean, the types of folks that are coming through your doors.
Absolutely, and just to give you an idea of that and to reinforce that, over the last month, we've had physicians come in and talk to us about ideas that they've got. We've had oil field truck drivers come in and talk to us. We've had high school dropouts. We've had college students. Just the wide variety of people, both in good-paying jobs, in low-paying jobs. People have a problem, and they've identified a way to solve that problem for themselves and see that, hey, I can solve other people's problems. We can spread this across, and this idea that I had to solve a problem for me can solve other people's problems and grow into a business.
And I think that's the dream. I think that's your dream. I think that's my dream. I think it's everybody's. Is that in a perfect world, you'd find the next Microsoft. I mean, you're gonna find the next Beats by Dre. I mean, you're gonna find the next big thing just on some napkin idea here in Bismarck and Mandan. And again, the value that the Idea Center and the CTB bring to this community is that we have a mechanism to identify those folks, to help them along the path, to get them from idea to reality. And I've got to believe, Eric, that's your hope as well, is that next person that comes through the door, you're going to help them produce something. You're going to help them achieve that goal.
Well, absolutely. The hope is to find the giant company. You're going to have 2,000 employees 10 years from now. But we call victories, too, where you have somebody who starts on their own, and maybe it's something that they were selling through Pride of Dakota, and they decide they want to get bigger. So they start focusing their effort on it. We help them decide what steps to take to grow, and over the next year, they expand, so now they're full-time. They've opened up a job in Bismarck Mandan for somebody else. Then they're going to hire an assistant. And all of a sudden, that little company that was one person's part-time job is now employing 5 people. That's a great win.
Well,
if you can do that 50 times a year, that makes an impact.
That's exactly. We can have one employer with 2,000 people, or we can have 2,000 employers with one person, and that type of organic growth is tremendous for Bismarck and Mandan. Now, when we come back from our next break, you heard Eric mention a little bit about events, and that's one of the great things about the startup community right now is we've got so many events for you to take part in. We'll talk about that here in the next 3 minutes, but this is the Dakota Housing Network on Super Talk 1270.
Currently, it's 37.
Mary Lou Henner, weekdays on Super Talk 1270.
We're just going to let this play for a little bit, Jim, because everyone knows Shaft.
You're damn right.
We're
They
back.
say that cat Shaft is a bad,
That's, you fill in the blanks.
but I'm talking about Shaft.
We're back here on the Dakota Housing Network on Super Talk 1270. And as I mentioned during the show, producer Jim today, we are going all instrumental with coming back from breaks, going out to breaks. And here's Shaft.
The super funky instrumentals of the 70s.
He's got a great radio voice. He's got a great radio
From
voice.
the Soul Train.
We're all over the place today on the Dakota Housing Network. My name is Brian Ritter. I'm your host from the Bismarck Mandan Development Association. My guest today in studio is Eric Holmstrom from the Idea Center and Center for Technology and Business. This segment, Eric, let's talk about some of the events that you referenced before the last break. Now, we've talked about the energy, the entrepreneurial energy in Bismarck and Mandan, and how far it's come in the last few years, the activity that you're seeing here at the Idea Center. But another way, in addition from people with their own ideas and trying to take their businesses from an idea to reality, another way that you're stimulating that activity is through events, is it not? I mean, we've got numerous events, so let's talk about them.
Absolutely, and we try to tell people that we don't drive the events, we don't control the events, but as much as possible, we try to help them grow and to help feed into them.
Now, we've had, this last year has really been, kind of a banner year. 2015 was for entrepreneurial events, and one of those was TEDx. And I know TEDx is certainly still in process. A lot of people know what TEDx is, but talk about the first couple of TED events here in Bismarck Mandan, Eric.
Absolutely. Last year, we'd never had TEDs in Bismarck before, and the University of Mary held a University TED event, and we held a TED event at the Heritage Center for the community. Both of those sold out. We're limited to 100 tickets because of TED's rules. They're pretty strict.
Yeah.
But
if someone hasn't taken part in a TED before, Eric, give them kind of the 10-second tour of, how a TED event works and what the goal is.
It's not something that you'd expect from a business conference.
No.
It's to bring in ideas, and it's really to stimulate people, to invigorate a crowd, to get them thinking in ways they hadn't thought of before, to connect to people that you otherwise wouldn't connect with, and really hope that organic growth occurs and good things happen.
Like Eric said, if you haven't been to one before, keep watching, because I believe the University of Mary is planning another TEDx University in April.
Yeah, that one's coming up soon, and then we should be having a TEDx Bismarck. They'll only let us give it one name, so we can't call it Bismarck Mandan. We tried, but that should be coming up in the late summer.
If you've not been to a TED event before, you really should try to make it, because, as Eric says, it's unique. It's not something you expect at a business conference, and I think most importantly for people like me, it keeps moving. Just because of the way it's structured, you're not going to get there at 7:30, have your bagel breakfast, and then sit there until 5:30 and go, God, this is taking forever. It's going to keep moving.
It's going to keep moving, and no one's going to promise you're going to love every speaker, but I guarantee you can't come there and not take away ideas from at least a couple of them.
Now, let's also talk about this. We didn't talk about this previously, Eric, though, but what about OTA? OTA, I think, it's a funny name. It doesn't seem to make as much sense as TED does, but we'll talk about OTA a little bit, because it's coming back to Bismarck here in about a month.
That's right. In OTA, the goal is to impact North Dakota, Minnesota, and South Dakota. So it's the last three letters.
OTA, folks. It took me longer than I would care to admit to figure that out. But OTA, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, a very focused, kind of like a TED event, but focused to the energy of this region.
Exactly. It's very much like a TED, but a TED with a huge budget behind it, because you're going to get speakers coming in from Dallas or North Carolina or California. So they really work to bring in outside ideas that help to feed the energy that's here. Whereas with the TED event, the idea is more to bring attention to those regional ideas. You may bring people in from Iowa or South Dakota, but not necessarily Florida.
Mm-hmm. And again, OTA had their first event here last spring, and they are coming back to Bismarck Mandan on March 14th. And I believe their website is weareota.com, and you can register more, I believe.
I believe so. It may be .org.
Now, try both of them. It's not going to take too long to type .org or .com.
No.
But look it up. OTA's coming back to Bismarck on March 14th. You got TEDx events coming up. But I think another event that the Idea Center and your organization, Eric, is much more involved in is Innovate ND.
That's right. In Innovate ND, I talked a little bit earlier about the programming that can help entrepreneurs over those initial hurdles to help to get them to the point where a business can be successful. And Innovate North Dakota is a program set up by the state to help them do that. The event portion of that is we're able to bring in really good, really focused conferences, for lack of a better term, 5 times a year. We call them boot camps. We've got 2 coming up this spring where we bring in Dr. Jeff Stamp, who was head of innovation at PepsiCo, led the entrepreneurial program at North Dakota, and now travels around the world doing training for entrepreneurs. So it's a level of education that we wouldn't have access to otherwise, and we have access to in North Dakota because of the Innovate program. And it talks about all the different aspects of starting a business, how to pitch for investors, how to do initial business planning, how to do your financials. But the part that we like and that we think really helps entrepreneurs is it's a 4-stage process where it pairs an entrepreneur with a certified entrepreneurial center and allows the certified entrepreneurial center to help reimburse some cost to that entrepreneur, to do market studies for them, to help them develop the business plan, to help develop some of those basic building blocks any business needs, sometimes even developing a prototype to see if you can pitch, to do focus groups. And it helps to make that financially possible for those entrepreneurs.
So if there's an entrepreneur listening to us right now, Eric, and they want to learn more, or they want to know, where do I start with InnovateND? I mean, where do they go?
There's 2 different ways you could do that. One, go to innovatend.com. That's a website you can find out the information. But it's really best, give us a call. You can look us up. We're ideacenternd.org or trainingnd.com. Look us up, give us a call. You can come in, we'll explain it to you, let you know whether or not we think your idea matches, and show you how to apply for the program. And what we're seeing lately is we're seeing people, you hear those ads on the radio all the time that say, hey, send us your idea and we're going to help make you $1 million. We're seeing people come through. We offer those same services in North Dakota. We're not going to ask for a giant check up front. And we're going to help you grow rather than try to figure out how we can make money.
So, Eric, I think it's important to reiterate that if you choose to participate in the program, your staff and the team, the Idea Center and the CTB, I mean, you're going to help them through that process. I mean, you're going to help them. I mean, they have to have the idea, no doubt. I mean, you're not going to supply them with an idea, obviously, but if they have that spark, they have that, they're going to come to you. You're going to help them. I mean, you're going to help them through that process. You're going to coach them through those things in hopes of, again, taking that idea to a reality.
Right, and I think the key word there is coaching, because we're not going to drive an idea for somebody, and we're not going to take equity. When you come to us with an idea, we're going to hold it confidential. It's your idea. We're not going to take it. And we're going to give you steps to move forward. We're not necessarily going to write your business plan for you or make the decisions for you. It's our job to give you the information you need so you can make the decisions and so you can move forward in a way that makes sense.
So let's say you go through the process. They give you a call. They go through the process, and their idea is successful. And because InnovateND is a competition. In some respects, but what is the payoff for a successful run through InnovateND?
That's a real benefit. There's 4 stages, so we have a chance to review people's progress, and not everybody who enters InnovateND has access to the entire pot of money, but potentially there's up to $32,500 in assistance an entrepreneur can get. And if you think about an idea on a bar napkin, to get that to prototype, to have a financial plan for manufacturing, to be introduced to manufacturing partners, get focus grouping so you can identify who your target market is, to identify a price point that you can make money at in a potential distribution network. There's a lot of benefits there.
How long, so from start to finish, Eric, how long does the process generally take an entrepreneur if you're going to go through all 4 stages, if you're going to go through the coaching, and you're going to see this thing through to the finish line? How long? Is there an expected timeline we can plan on?
Those timelines, because of the wide variety of ideas out there, are really going to vary. But that's one of the things that we try to do is set realistic expectations, because we see people walk in with a bar napkin and they think they're going to see a product on the Target shelves in 4 months. Well, maybe, but that's the wild exception to the rule.
Yeah.
There's steps that you have to go through to get there. So we try to sit down and set up a stage gate process that'll show you these are the different activities that we think need to be done for you to get to your goals. Depending what your goals are, those stages are going to be different and the time frame is going to be different.
Are there certain eligibility requirements? Do I have to be resident of Bismarck, Mandan? Do I have to be resident of North Dakota? Are there any eligibility requirements that I have to meet in order to participate?
Well, the program is focused on ideas that bring in money into North Dakota from outside North Dakota. Now, there's some wiggle room there. If you're in a part of North Dakota and you're going to be expanding into Fargo and Grand Forks and Minot and Dickinson and Williston, you're expanding around, you can qualify. Mm-hmm. But the real goal is to make the product here, hold the intellectual property here, and then sell worldwide to bring that revenue back into North Dakota to help diversify our economy so we're not as dependent upon commodities.
I think you've heard Eric talk very, very well about and speak very well about the multitude of events. And again, the reason the events are so important for economic development in Bismarck and Mandan and the entire state is that, again, you're creating that energy. And those events are bringing entrepreneurs together in a way they've never been brought together in the past. And when you bring those entrepreneurs together in a room, as Eric knows and as I know, there's an energy there, and there's a synergy there, and ideas just start flowing, and it's really unlike anything that you've ever seen before. And it's something unique to the state. It's something unique that only entrepreneurs can bring to the table. So we're going to talk a little bit more about events here when we come back from the break, but we're going to be back here in about 3 minutes on Super Talk 1270.
Currently, it's 39.
Here's Sean Hannity, weekday afternoons on Super Talk 1270.
All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Brian Ritter with the Bismarck Mandan Development Association, and you're here on the Dakota Housing Network, Super Talk 1270. That choo-choo train in the background.
The BT Express.
The musical theme
Super
today
Bad
is-
Sounds of the 70s. Instrumental edition.
And that's the theme for today's show. Producer Jim has got a whole lineup of these things that we've been going in and out of breaks with, and it is unique, and it is pretty cool. I'm joined today in studio by Eric Holmstrom from the Idea Center, Center for Technology and Business. And before the break, Eric, we were talking about events, and we didn't get to, there's one event in particular you wanted to make sure that we talked about, and that is the Leading Ladies Luncheon.
That's right. One of the things that really we've become a part of now with our merger with the Center for Technology and Business is the North Dakota Women's Business Center, which does a wonderful job putting on events, certifying businesses as women-owned, because if you're working with the federal government or certain large companies, there are set-asides for certified businesses, and we can help those businesses get that certification. But a big part of it is events, to help people realize that women have made a big difference in North Dakota and are making a big difference in North Dakota. So the Leading Ladies Lunches are coming up in March for Women's History Month on March 9th in Fargo, March 23rd in Bismarck. So far, we've revealed 3 of the 5 honorees for Bismarck. There's Tracy Finneman, Amy Mossett, and Jackie Huber. So we'll be unveiling 2 more, and the idea is women who've made an impact in North Dakota. So those are great events. If you're interested in getting tickets for those, look at our website, give us a call, and we do great work in that whole realm.
Eric, the website again, trainingnd.com.
That's correct.
You got them. So, speaking of events, another event that your organization, our organization, have been involved in, but not necessarily lead, are the startup weekends. Mm-hmm. And Bismarck Mandan hosted our very first startup weekend last January at the Bobcat Acceleration Center. And startup weekends are something that are very unique, and I don't know if they are probably not for everybody. I think if you're an entrepreneur, you're an inventor, you've got that running through your blood. I think this is a perfect opportunity for you to actually, to get that out of your system. But Eric, tell our listeners, the concept about what is and what's behind a startup weekend.
Sure. A startup weekend, the first thing that comes to mind when I hear that is energy. Mm-hmm. You can't believe the energy that's in a room. And it's wonderful for entrepreneurs and inventors, but I think really anybody could benefit, because whether you're in the corporate world or working for yourself, we value innovation now. We value how can we do what we're doing better. That's really the whole idea of a startup weekend, is to show people that you really can do it. So people come together on Friday. We met at the Bobcat Acceleration Center, which is a remarkable facility, and that helped to feed at the atmosphere. But we had a little more than 60 people in the room. We had a facilitator who did a great job getting everybody to throw out ideas, from the crazy business idea to ones that you hear and you go, wow, hasn't someone thought of that already? Then the group gets to vote on which ideas they want to work on. You split into teams, and over the next 54 hours, work with coaches, work with marketing people, work with business development people who can make apps and have huge technological or graphic design skills, to take this concept to a business plan, to potentially a prototype, potentially a website, and then present it on Sunday to a panel of investors. Or potential investors. We were at Dakota Stage, and we had a great panel last year. We filled the facility, and just you saw the energy, and what these people were able to accomplish in 54 hours was amazing. And it opens people's eyes. It makes you realize it's really not that daunting. It's really something I can do. And whether this project is something I'm going to continue on isn't that important, but it gives me confidence for things in the future that I can make a difference and that it's worth taking that step.
And of course, the dream from any economic development professional, or any community for that matter, is that, again, that you find that you're looking for either the next big thing, mm-hmm. or even the next little thing. Mm-hmm. Anything that you can take again to reality adds to the economic vitality and economic health of this community. And events like Startup Weekend, like TEDx, like Innovate, are just more ways we can try to make that happen for everyone involved.
Exactly. And I'll argue till I die that if you put 60 people in a room who have business ideas, good things are going to come from that. They're going to talk to each other. They're going to encourage each other. And it might not be an idea that came out of Startup Weekend, but those relationships last. And 3 years from now, 5 years from now, they may be ready to take that leap, and we may get the next KLJ started. You never know.
So keep your eyes peeled, listeners, for information on the next few startup weekends. There are plans underway for a family startup weekend in April, correct?
That's right, and that's exciting because that'll be the first ever family startup weekend. There's never been this concept tried, and it's the idea to bring in families, bring in parents and children or grandparents and children or members of different generations together working on these things and see what comes out of that, because when you bring energy into a room, you see great things. Kids don't have the boundaries that we have. You haven't given up and been told that's a bad idea enough.
Right.
So you put that energy into that room, and we're excited to see what happens.
Now we'll have family startup weekend in April. Keep your eyes peeled for that. And again, that's the first time it's ever been tried. And then a follow-up startup weekend possibly later this fall.
That's right. Right now we're targeting the fall. It's dependent upon finding location, getting everything together, because we want to put on a good event. We want people coming to our events to have a good time, to come out stimulated and feeling like it was a real positive experience.
Now again, as we've just been talking about for the last half hour now, events really serve a purpose because they bring those personalities together. They bring that energy together. They create that synergy. And the reason that's important is because increasingly Bismarck Mandan is an entrepreneurial place. No one is ever going to mistake us for the Silicon Valley. No one is ever going to call us Austin, Texas, anything like that, or the Research Triangle for that matter. But Bismarck Mandan is becoming an increasingly more entrepreneurial place, and it's really because of this concept of a startup community. It's to create those synergies and create that energy by bringing entrepreneurs together, whether it's through events that are regularly scheduled or kind of pop-ups like Startup Weekend. But really, it's to let the entrepreneurs themselves lead that community and not have people like us in economic development or city or state leaders say, this is how you start a business, this is how it has to happen. Now, that's really the concept behind a startup community, correct?
Correct. And there's a lot of spin-offs from that are positive. Talking about the unemployment rate, you've got kids at University of Mary and BSC United Tribes who are seeing this going on. And whether they start a business themselves, if they're interested in it and stay because of that, we're helping to fill those unfilled jobs and keeping local talent here.
And I think that's everyone's goal, of course, whether you're a mom or a dad or you're an economic development person, whatever it is, we want to keep that talent here. Now, because we have this increasingly entrepreneurial place in Bismarck Mandan, the Idea Center is a part of that. Now, Eric, talk to us about the Idea Center, the Center for Technology and Business's role in that community. Absolutely.
It's important that entrepreneurship isn't a government thing, isn't a nonprofit or a corporate thing. It's energy, it's individuals, and it's passion. So it's important that the leaders be entrepreneurs themselves. And the role of the Idea Center, the Center for Technology and Business, other organizations, is to help to feed that, to help fill in the gaps where it's needed, and to help the people that pop out of that. So all of a sudden ideas start popping out of that. We can walk side by side with that person and help them to develop a plan to move their idea forward. But we want that sort of organic growth to come from the community.
I think what's important to note, especially for the listeners, people who are involved in this process, is that we don't know what the community is going to look like in 6 months, in 12 months, in 2 years, whatever it may be. It's not going to be Fargo. It's not going to be Boulder. It's not. It's going to be what our entrepreneurs. It's going to be what Bismarck Mandan's entrepreneurs make it. And that's what's so exciting, is that you don't know what's going to happen. You heard Eric talk about the CTB and the Idea Center's role. From the Bismarck Mandan Development Association's perspective, we very much and gladly have taken a back seat and said, listen, yeah, we're not entrepreneurs. We can't tell you how to make that, how to create that synergy. We can't tell you how to take this idea and make it happen. We can support the events, we can fill in gaps, and we're happy to do that. But again, we don't know what it's going to look like, and that's the exciting part.
Right, and not knowing what it looks like, we hear that sometimes. You're not, well, I can't do this because I'm not in Fargo or I'm not on the coast. If you think about what's here, we're a community, not necessarily within Bismarck Mandan, but as you go out a little bit of farmers and ranchers. And do you know any farmer or rancher who's not in his barn creating things to make his life easier? And it's problem solving, and those are entrepreneurs. Those are potential problem solving devices that can become businesses.
And that's how Bobcat came to be. If you've been around Bismarck Mandan for a long time, you obviously know what Bobcat means to this community. But that was a function of innovation. It was two farmers needed a way to clean out turkey coops. And all of a sudden, fast forward 70-some years, you've got Bobcat here, and it's a worldwide company.
Absolutely. And so when people say that we're not innovative, there's incredible innovation. We're just North Dakotans and don't like to talk about it.
It's like we talked about. It's going to look different, and it's going to be what Bismarck Mandan needs it to be, and what our crews make it out to be. So, Eric, we've got just a minute left here in the show. Why don't you tell people again how to find you, what the website is, what the phone number, and how they can get in touch with you?
Absolutely. It's trainingnd.com is the main website. You can also do ideacenterd.org. We're right on Broadway, a little ways off of Big Boy. You can't miss our sign. Give us a call at 223-0707. But you've heard me talking, we don't have really siloed roles, and we do the same thing every day, which is great because we can work with those entrepreneurs and we can work with unique personalities and help that person reach their potential. That's really what we want to do.
Awesome. Eric, I want to thank you so much for being in studio with us today. The work that you guys and the Idea Center do is critically important to the future of our community. I want to thank you again for being here and for everything that you do for Bismarck Mandan.
Thanks for the opportunity, Brian.
All right. Folks, thank you very much for joining us today here on the Dakota Housing Network. We will see you again in a month's time.